It's really bad.
Danielle Grant is starving.
I know. I'm trying to see if I can get some food because we literally don't have anything to eat today or tomorrow. So we're going to try to make ends meet, and we can.
Desperate for food, nowhere to go, Grant and many others got to the Hope Line today just to make an appointment to come back later in the week for food. Resources are slim, leaving 40% of Bronxites without money to feed themselves, some still in shock.
The shock hit America like a sudden blackout. One moment, consumers were lining up for their usual fast food meals, barely noticing the ever-climbing prices. The next, a wave of viral comparisons from across Africa started flooding every platform, revealing something that left the entire nation speechless for the first time. Americans realized their fast food combo, once the symbol of cheap convenience, now cost more than full, freshly prepared meals in countries they'd long underestimated.
About 2 months ago, I stopped eating dinner almost every night of the week so that my boyfriend and I could have enough food left over to have lunch the next day. This was before we were about to lose our food stamps. Mind you, we both work.
I don't think that we really realize the depth that this is, the damage that this is going to do, but the women, the mothers, and the families.
Across states, frustration grew. Customers asked how a simple burger and drink could cost more than a complete plate of rice, vegetables, meat, and dessert. In places thousands of miles away, economists scrambled to give explanations, but none of them could hide the uncomfortable truth. America's system had cracked, and Africa's rise was exposing it in real time. Within days, the narrative flipped. Africa was no longer the world's discount continent.
Africa is the only continent that does not have to import anything. They don't need your oil. They don't need your gas. They don't need your gold. They don't need your food. They don't need your rice. They don't need your cattle. They don't need your corn. They don't need nothing. It is the only continent that does not have to import anything.
And instead, it was becoming a new benchmark for value, quality, and economic balance. And America, once the global example, was now struggling to justify how its fast food prices had spiraled into absurdity. As news spread globally, one question echoed louder than the rest: how did America lose control so badly that fast food became a luxury while Africa quietly built a system the world suddenly envied? The answer is far more shocking than anyone expected.
One of the things I love about food in Africa is that you don't have to pay a premium to not have chemicals in your food. So when you come to America, you might see prices like this, $3.19 for a gallon of whole milk. That sounds good, but that's the nasty stuff that's full of hormones and it's just, I wouldn't drink it. If you want to have stuff that's actually organic, you have to pay $12 a gallon to get the stuff that doesn't have hormones. So you're paying 4 times as much just to have healthy milk. Go figure. Anyway, that's why I love African food so much more.
I need to say I'm sorry. I voted for him. I thought he was going to help folks like me. I really did. Now my SNAP's gone, my Medicaid's gone. They cut off my heat and help last week. I don't know how I'm supposed to buy groceries next month or keep the lights on. I ain't got no...
Me and my kids have been 5 days without food.
The first headlines came out of New York, and they were almost unbelievable. The price of a basic fast food meal had risen higher than the cost of a full, freshly cooked meal in countries across Africa. It sounded impossible, even ridiculous, but within days, every major outlet confirmed it. America, the land of convenience food, was now charging more for a burger, fries, and a drink than an entire multi-course plate served in bustling Lagos, Nairobi, Accra, Kigali, or Johannesburg. The shock spread faster than the news itself. Social media exploded. Videos comparing prices went viral. A man in Texas held up a receipt showing nearly $25 for a simple fast food combo. Moments later, a family in Kenya posted a video of an entire table filled with rice, grilled chicken, vegetables, fruits, and bottled water, all for the equivalent of $8 The contrast was staggering. Americans were confused. Africans were amused. Economists were speechless. People wanted answers, but the United States didn't have any, at least not good ones. The rise in fast food prices had been creeping upward for years, but now it had crossed a line that made the world stop and stare. It wasn't just inflation or supply chains or wages. It was something deeper, something structural, something that suggested the model Americans had relied on for generations was cracking at the seams. In cities like Atlanta, Chicago, and Los Angeles, customers complained that ordering fast food was becoming a luxury experience rather than a cheap convenience. Families who used to pick up quick meals on busy nights now found themselves spending nearly the same amount as a proper sit-down restaurant. Teens who once flocked to these chains after school started posting online about impossible prices and the death of fast food culture. Meanwhile, across Africa, the story felt completely different. Restaurants were thriving, street food culture was booming, local markets were full, vibrant, and affordable. Meals were fresh, rich, and diverse: stew in Ghana, chapati and beans in Kenya, suya in Nigeria, nyama choma in Tanzania, jollof and grilled fish in Senegal. People could feed entire families without breaking their budgets. It wasn't that Africa didn't have economic challenges. It did, but somehow the cost of daily meals stayed grounded. In reality, inflation hit, but the food culture stayed resilient. Local agriculture supported local restaurants. People cooked, people shared, people valued food as part of life, not something processed, packaged, and sold behind fluorescent lights. By contrast, America's fast food industry was built on speed and scale, a machine that once fed millions cheaply but now struggled under its own weight. Supply shortages, rising wages, transportation costs, corporate profit pressures, and declining quality all collided at once. The system that once fed America efficiently was now pricing itself out of reach. But the question that haunted American economists was simple: why was Africa doing better? To find the answer, analysts began studying the differences. They discovered that African restaurants relied heavily on local supply chains, direct from farm products, and lower-cost cooking methods. Meals were crafted from ingredients grown close to home, not shipped across continents or stored in giant industrial freezers. This minimized costs, supported farmers, and kept food affordable. America, on the other hand, was dependent on a massive, often fragile system. Ingredients traveled thousands of miles, demand fluctuated wildly, packaging costs exploded, franchise fees hit record highs, corporations prioritized profit margins even as customers struggled. Every new price adjustment felt like a punishment, but the most shocking revelation was cultural. In America, fast food had become the default meal. In Africa, it was an option, never the foundation. People there cooked daily. Families gathered around meals. Even in busy cities, people found time to eat well. Food wasn't rushed. It was respected, and that cultural difference had economic consequences. In Nigeria, a woman could walk into a roadside restaurant and get a full plate of rice, stew, and meat for the equivalent of $4. In America, the same amount barely covered a small side of fries. In Ethiopia, traditional injera meals cost less than a single milkshake in California. In Morocco, a family could enjoy couscous, vegetables, bread, and tea for less than the cost of one fast food combo in New York. The comparisons kept coming. They kept getting worse. In Detroit, a man posted a viral video showing his receipt: a burger, fries, and a soda, $22. In Ghana, a restaurant responded by posting a massive platter of grilled tilapia, banku, vegetables, and 2 bottles of water for less than half the price. The comment section erupted, but the shock didn't come only from the price difference. It came from the realization that Africa wasn't catching up anymore. It was surpassing expectations. And in some ways, surpassing America itself. Inside Washington, quiet meetings took place. Advisors whispered about consumer dissatisfaction, market instability, and economic optics. No one wanted to admit the embarrassing truth: America's fast food era, once a symbol of national identity, was losing relevance. People were cooking more, people were questioning convenience culture, people were becoming aware that the world outside the US offered better, fresher, cheaper meals. In Africa, the story took a different tone. Local media celebrated, leaders discussed the importance of food independence, chefs shared recipes with pride. The continent felt unified, not by politics, but by something far more powerful: the simple ability to feed people affordably. And for the first time, Americans weren't laughing at Africa. They were looking to it for answers. Across social platforms, a new trend began: Americans comparing their food receipts to African meals. Nigerians responded with humor. Kenyans responded with hospitality. South Africans responded with confidence. The global narrative had flipped. Africa wasn't the one asking questions. It was America, and the world had only begun to digest what that meant. As the comparisons between American fast food prices and African full meals spread, the shock turned into national frustration. Families across the United States felt betrayed by an industry that once promised affordability. Even longtime loyal customers questioned how a simple order could drain their wallets in seconds. It wasn't just an economic issue anymore, it had become personal. In Phoenix, a mother of 3 went viral after sharing a video of her family-ease dinner for basic fast food meals for nearly $90. She wasn't angry. She was exhausted. She ended the video with a quiet, powerful sentence that resonated across the country. "This isn't fast food anymore, it's a luxury." Meanwhile, in Tanzania, a group of university students responded with a cheerful clip showing their campus lunch table overflowing with ugali, greens, roasted meat, beans, and fruit. They joked that for the price of one American meal, they fed 15 people. The world laughed, but America didn't. Economists assembled on morning shows, trying to explain the crisis. They blamed rising costs, corporate pressures, global supply issues, and competitive wage adjustments, but none of the explanations landed with the public. People didn't want theories. They wanted to know why the same meal they bought last year for $8 now cost more than double. But the biggest confusion came from the comparisons with Africa. How was it possible, many Americans asked, that countries portrayed for decades as developing offered better food experiences at cheaper prices? African analysts stepped forward to explain the secret. Africa still fed itself. Local farms, local ingredients, local cooking, local distribution. Africa's food economy, despite its challenges, remained deeply rooted in community, tradition, and practicality. It hadn't lost itself to chains, monopolies, or industrial systems designed to cut corners. It was flexible, adaptive, and resilient. Where America built a giant machine, Africa maintained millions of small engines, each one powerful in its own way. In Lagos, a popular radio host summarized it bluntly: "America pays more because it forgot how to feed itself." The comment sparked a global debate. Historians pointed out that decades earlier, the U.S. had shifted heavily toward processed and packaged foods, sidelining local agriculture and small restaurants. The corporate takeover of the American food landscape had seemed efficient at first, but now its cracks were showing. A single disruption anywhere in the chain: shipping, packaging, fuel, or even lettuce supply sent prices soaring. Africa wasn't immune to such issues, but its decentralized food culture absorbed shock better. If a farm failed in one region, another region filled the gap. If one market struggled, another thrived. The diversity of food sources protected the continent from the kind of inflation America was facing. In Washington, policymakers began drafting proposals to curb food costs. Some suggested emergency subsidies, others wanted investigations into corporate pricing, but none of these efforts addressed the deeper problem. American consumers were losing trust in their own food system, and Africa was becoming the unexpected benchmark. In Johannesburg, a culinary festival drew international attention. Chefs showcased rich stews, fresh grilled meats, colorful vegetables, and traditional breads. The cost of a full entry ticket, which included 3 meals, was less than an average fast food dinner in Los Angeles. Western visitors were stunned. Many quietly admitted that Africa's food culture felt more vibrant and more affordable than anything back home. Africa wasn't just feeding itself well, it was feeding itself proudly. Meanwhile, American fast food chains tried to defend themselves. Press statements cited inflation and supply pressures. But consumers didn't want excuses. They wanted change. One chain even introduced a new budget-friendly meal, but the online reaction was harsh. Customers mocked the small portions and inflated price, comparing it to African meals as they had hundreds of times already. The comparison became a painful meme for American brands to endure. Daily talk shows in the U.S. began featuring African chefs who explained how their countries kept food affordable. They spoke of community farming, street food culture, low-waste cooking, and the importance of fresh markets. American audiences listened with fascination. It was as if they were rediscovering something their ancestors once knew but had forgotten decades ago. The narrative had flipped completely. America wasn't laughing at Africa. America was learning from it, but something deeper was happening beneath the economic chatter. African restaurants in the United States saw a sudden spike in demand. Places that served Senegalese, Ethiopian, Ghanaian, and Kenyan food were overwhelmed with new Customers curious about the cuisine that had stunned them online. People were drawn not just by the flavors, but by the affordability. While fast food restaurants raised prices, African restaurants kept theirs stable, supported by direct suppliers and simpler cooking methods. Food bloggers rushed to review these places. Customers lined up. Newspapers began writing profiles on African culinary traditions. Africa wasn't just inspiring conversations about economics, it was shaping America's food culture. In Nairobi, chefs celebrated the global attention. They knew Africa's culinary richness had been overlooked for too long. Now the world was finally noticing what Africans had always known. Good food didn't need to be expensive, it needed to be respected. Back in the US, the frustration grew into a movement. People demanded fairness. They called for transparency in pricing. Many questioned why megacorporations were reporting record profits while customers struggled to afford basic meals. What America didn't expect was the next twist. Several African economists proposed hosting an international for a non-sustainable food culture. Their goal was simple: to help countries adopt practices that kept food affordable and accessible. They invited governments from around the world. And for the first time in decades, the United States found itself not as a teacher, but as a student. Food was exposing the cracks in America's system and the strength in Africa's. The question remained, would America listen, or would it continue sinking deeper into a food crisis that made its fast food culture the most expensive version of itself? The world was watching, Africa was watching, and America was learning that the story it once told about the world no longer matched reality.